Hey, everybody, and welcome. Tonight, I'm having a conversation with, we're going to use all three names: Mark, Sean. Is it Puls or Pools?
Puls. Real
Puls.
easy. And please don't use all three. That is
Okay.
serial killer / assassination. Hi, how you
I'm
doing?
talking to Mark David Chapman. Tell me, in
Will
1980,
Booth, Lee Harvey Oswald, James Earl Jones. You know,
John Wayne Gacy.
there you go. How are you?
Good. How are you? Sorry, I just
Good.
you had all your names up there, and I'm like, okay, are we gonna? I
You
was
know,
gonna
it's
call you
I,
Mark Puls.
I was just gonna have my first and last name, and I'm like, you know what? It fits. Still, it's only 12 total letters, so why not throw it together?
That's true. We're
It's
not
a
running
recent
out.
change. It's not something.
We're not charging you by the letter, so you're good.
Yeah, no worries there. It fits.
So
It
yeah,
fits on
talk to
X.
Mark tonight, and
Hi.
obviously we've jumped off into unknown territory right off the gate here, right out of the gate with serial killers and all kinds of good stuff.
We knew we'd go
Um,
there, but
but
here we do this.
Mark and I were recently on. I'm going to blank on the Rise and Outshine.
Yes.
I should take notes, but I don't. So everything comes out of the memory. So sometimes it takes a second.
I can't
And
wait because
we
I
were
think
we
our
were on the show
Sixties memories
together,
will
right?
overlap.
So yeah,
Yeah, it was
that's how
great.
we
Fun time.
kind of met. Yeah. So so you're doing a thing called Knocked Conscious, and so uh we're not conscious. It's almost like when you say it, it makes sense, but when you think about it, you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't
Well, yeah,
make sense. They're missing two
it
letters in there. Un.
it still
You
doesn't
took
make
them off the
sense.
un.
Well, so the whole concept, it's taken a couple iterations, but the whole concept was I was struggling at 40 and I started seeking help. A lot of people seek psychological help, psychiatrists, things like that. I went to a neuro linguistic programmer, NLP, if you've ever heard of that.
Hmm.
It's a different type of like they go through more of a hypnosis or meditation type piece. And
Yeah. How
um,
interesting.
how it happened, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. But during the first meditation I did with the gentleman, I had a psychic precognitive vision that, in my opinion, happened the week after.
So why? But you had it while you were in the treatment, but it
Yeah.
was a future kind of situation.
Yeah, so I'll happily explain it. So it's really weird, but basically he was doing like a guided meditation. He's like, you're on the
Mhm.
beach and you look up and you see this eagle feather coming down from the sky and you put it in your hand. And then you
Mhm.
pick up this jewel in your hand and you look up at the sky and you see these window panes. And like, do you ever I think you and I are probably older school, but remember looking through window shops to look at TVs back in the day, like
Oh,
during
right.
Christmas
It's like
time?
kind of like a louvered kind of window, so it's all
Right,
separate
so you're kinda
things. Yeah.
looking through that. So think of these, like, panes of glass, and in those glass, there were reflections,
Hmm.
and I saw a black man in a suit behind a podium, and he looks like he's shaking someone's hand to his right, and then he moves
Yeah.
to his left, and then I see, like, a flash, like a gunshot, and I had a
Okay.
visceral emotion to that, and
Do we know who
I
the person was or no?
yeah, yeah, I'm gonna
Oh, okay.
circle
I'm
around to that,
sorry.
how that happened.
I'm getting you too far ahead.
No, no, I love it. No, thank you so much because this is great because we're just chatting here, right? Because once again,
Yeah.
this is like if I didn't experience this personally, I would not believe it to be completely frank. And
Hmm.
so um we come out of this meditation and I go, remember, this is when Obama was there. So I saw a black man in a suit behind a podium. You kind of make that
Hmm.
weird connect. I'm like, I just saw Obama get shot. Like it was just a
Really?
weird, it was my knee-jerk reaction to say that, obviously, right?
Sure.
But your subconscious
Well,
picks, you
was
know,
this the time when he was first elected?
yes, this was
Yeah.
during his presidency.
Okay.
So
So
it's
then, yeah,
sometime
I
during his,
mean, to be
or
honest
maybe
with you,
even
I think
right
a lot
after.
of people thought he was gonna get shot because he was the first black president. So,
Right,
there
right.
wasn't a lot of positivity in the air with some people.
There was a little concern there for a while, to be
Yeah,
completely honest, for
yeah.
sure. So that was on a Thursday. So I had my sessions on Thursday. Well, I come in the next Thursday and I'm sitting with the gentleman and he starts telling me a story about this thing that happened the night before, the shooting in South Carolina with the Clementa Pinckney. It was a
Mhm.
pastor. It was a shooting. White supremacist Dylan and Roof shot like 9 people.
Okay.
And there's a video of Clementa Pinckney in April of 2015 is when this happened. And there's him behind a podium making a speech, and he made the exact mannerisms that I saw.
Weird.
It's odd. I'm happy to share it. Once again, this is what I've experienced. This doesn't mean it's real. It's just what I've
But the but
experienced.
but so you had this, prior to the event happening,
Yeah, the
but
week before, exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
but because of, maybe because of just popular culture as it was or as it is
Lack of
influencing
context.
you, yeah, then
Yeah.
you're like, "Okay, my thought must have been this, but then this other thing happened in reality."
Right. Now, mind you, when I came out of that first vision that I had with this gentleman, he said that either happened in another dimension or it's going to happen somewhere or it's going to happen something weird like that. It was very
Kinda
odd.
like astral,
Yeah,
yeah,
precognitive something,
projection.
right?
Yeah,
Quantum, whatever.
yeah.
So, so uh, he's the one who made me aware of it. He's the one that said you're subconsciously put Obama because black man in a suit, like that's
Mhm.
exactly what you would
Right, he's
think
probably the
during
most
that
famous
time.
black man in a suit at the time.
Correct. Because he was the president. It was 2015.
Yeah.
So I had this vision. So that was odd, but it knocked me conscious to this other world to go down
Mm,
the rabbit hole.
cool.
So I started looking into consciousness and what's going on with all of that. So I started doing other meditations. So this next meditation, a few months later, I have this meditation and I see this gentleman, and I don't want to use names because I'm not here to dox anyone, but it's a very
Mhm,
prominent military gentleman. And I saw his face and I associate him with another person because they look alike. So I thought I was doing the same thing with the other vision,
mhm.
if that made sense.
Yeah.
I'm talking to my NLP therapist, and on the way out, it's like, oh, by the way, I just had another meditation and I saw this guy. Now, my therapist is like a very deadpan person. And for the
Mhm.
first time I ever saw him, he viscerally shifted in his seat, like, you saw, and he stopped and he paused and he goes, you saw who? And I saw, I just saw a vision. He was in the corner. He just a picture of his face came up, and I know him from this thing back in
Mhm.
the day, but I just can't. And he goes, he kind of sits back in his chair and he goes, I have, served in command in the British Army under him in South America. He was a U.S. leading the forces. I served under him, and I actually have a call with him tomorrow.
Oh, wow, how
And
strange.
so I little things like that happen. So
Now,
may I
did
share?
you can
Oh,
you
go.
don't have any control over it though? You're this is just like whenever it just sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. You don't have
Yeah.
any triggering, like, okay, I feel funny today, so today's the day I'm gonna get something. Nothing like that.
Right. No, but when I do go into meditative states, I see not good things a lot.
Mhm.
So I try to I try to avoid it, to be completely honest.
This sounds horrible. Didn't you want go through all this so you felt better, and then now
It's
you're just getting
burdensome.
more traumatized?
Yeah, it's really burdensome. It's really burdensome, but it's kind of opened me up because I come from a very science side. I don't come from spirit.
Mhm.
Because I'm into you have to taste it, smell it, feel it. But let's be honest, some things are not explained yet, right?
Oh,
We
no,
haven't
lots of
gone
things
faster
aren't
than the speed of
explained,
light.
yeah.
Right.
We
So
we we
like,
kid ourselves into thinking we can explain everything, yeah.
right. Well, the example I use is imagine taking a big lighter and going back in time to caveman
Mhm.
time and making fire in your hand. They're either going to stone you or praise you. There's not really in between there. You know what I mean?
I
There's,
think it happened and it became organized religion.
there you go. Exactly. Right.
No,
It's like
I'm
Army of
just
Darkness
don't
style.
nobody get all mad at me. No, I'm just joking.
No, no, not at all. We're just having fun. So and so I had this experience, and then sometimes it's fun. So this one experience I had, I was with my ex-girlfriend and we are eating and I look at her and I go, "I wouldn't eat this on a boat. I wouldn't eat this with a goat." And I start quoting some
Sure,
popular
Dr.
person,
Seuss.
right?
Yeah.
Right. We're coming up to a red light and there's an entrance that pulls out prior to the red light. We're at a red light, so I let the car in front of me. I could have pulled up to the red light and let him pull up behind me, but I stopped.
Mhm.
The car pulls out, the license plate DRSEUSS, stickers all along the back.
Mm.
You know, how do it's just like weird. It's like odd. Not, I don't know how
Yeah,
to
yeah,
explain it.
happenstance or the
Yeah,
coincidence or,
yeah.
um, what's another word? Dang, I'm trying to think, there's another
Just,
word for that.
it is. It's some whatever. I don't know. So,
Well, it's
I
it's
mean,
kinda
I've
like the
gone down the rabbit
zeitgeist.
hole.
So you're in the zeitgeist at the moment and it's all
Yeah,
happening and things are popping out to you
yeah.
and that's cool though, but I mean, it would be so have you tried the lucid dreaming or anything like that, since
I've
you've had
done
this
a lot
experience?
of different types of things. Yeah, I've actually worked with a psychic. Oh, what am I talking about? It's been such a while since I've done it, but like a psychic reader, like
Mhm.
I work with somebody who did that, and she did a reading with my mom and myself, and it was about a trip going home that I had planned with my mom, and she had told three or four things in the order in which they happened,
Mm.
and that was interesting. And
That's
it's very
interesting.
specific, and I can go through it specifically as well. You
Yeah,
know, I've
that's
done past life
interesting.
regressions, where I did a past life regression. I don't know if you're familiar with what that is.
Sure, sure. Shirley MacLaine, all over that kind of stuff. She was in her
Yeah.
book.
So basically, yeah, you go through a meditative state and you're with someone who guides you and they walk you through and you start seeing visions of past lives you walk through.
Mhm,
And I'll share the audio with you, Bob, and you'd be like, that is really interesting. But basically, right as the person tells me that I'm entering the realm, the audio goes very different.
mhm.
And it's basically unlistenable after that, but something's making noise. It's very
Mm,
odd. So it's little things like that, and I'm both terrified, fascinated, but trying to understand it.
mhm.
And I just, it was like I said, it was like a knocked conscious moment. So now I'm just very open to ideas and trying to figure out things.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So do you still, do your, meditation on any kinda interval now, or is it, still therapeutic for you, or, has
I
it
haven't
gotten to
med
where every time you do it, it becomes traumatizing, and so you're like, "Maybe not today."
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually backed away from it because it does become a little burdensome for me personally.
Mhm,
And there's a lot of people talk about like protecting yourself and things like that, but I think it's helped others at times. I found it to help others when I can
mhm,
interact with people in a different level. It's not
mhm.
necessarily talking or, you know, even touch.
The interesting thing for a lot of those things is just this lack of control. So, like you mentioned that, these things just happen and you don't necessarily well, you don't actually want them to happen sometimes because it's negative, but um you kind of go into this, state and then it goes in directions that you have no clue. That's the
Yeah.
scary part of it. And that's I think what a lot of people like about all these things is because it is so random
Right.
and um and that's part of the mysteries of the world as it were is the randomness of it all, even though maybe there is actually structure to it, we just don't know what that structure is yet.
Yeah, and that's really what I'm trying to, I don't know, piece together with the experience that I had because my experiences are definitely not like people talk. I've not done, for example, DMT or
Mhm.
psilocybin. I do have medical other stuff, but I don't take that stuff, and I don't have visions like people talk about the people in those worlds. If you've
Yeah,
ever heard DMT trips and things, these
right.
are legit futuristic events that have happened. So if I'm happy to share one more that was just really
Oh yeah,
odd, that
I was gonna say
like
Cybacillin is
how
actually
it works.
coming on as a depression uh, small amounts of Cybacillin is a depression medication these days.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
it certainly is. I mean, it's really interesting what Colorado's doing with theirs, although
Mhm.
Colorado just did something very weird today too. So, This this to be interesting. Are they do they touch your state in Missouri? Are they
No,
neighbors?
no. So
Really?
we're unfortunately, well, fortunately and unfortunately, Kansas is in between.
Okay.
And if you've ever been to Kansas, there's a whole
I've
lot
been
of
through,
Kansas.
yeah.
Yeah, a
I've been
whole lot of
through,
Kansas.
Missouri, took that route down to then through Oklahoma to Oklahoma City
Hmm.
to the 40. I've
Yeah,
driven
yeah,
cross country like 6 times, so I've driven
yeah,
through St. Louis a couple times.
yeah. So yeah, Kansas, and Oklahoma. But if you want to get if you're heading to Denver, you go through Kansas, and it's just a
Yeah,
long haul.
yeah. So
But no, go ahead. I'm
so
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
no,
off there.
no worries at all. We could talk all anything you want, Bob. I love all the different topics we could probably discuss today. So, so I was doing a meditation circle with the psychic medium, and she was heading it, and basically it was a circle. And what happens is there's these things called guided meditations where they
Hmm.
tell they kind of there's a goal to the meditation. Like this one was to see someone on the other side who has passed, like a loved one, like a grandparent or a great, an aunt or somebody like that.
Hmm.
So basically, we turned on this one guided meditation that was supposed to guide you there. And I start seeing basically what happens is I see black and then I see waves of purple come through.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, I saw this picture of this really fine German beer glass with a fine gold painted lip on it. You ever see like a
Okay.
really nice, pretty beer glass?
Tuborg Gold. That was an old beer
Yes.
from Germany.
And and then I saw a pitcher with like wheat beer, golden wheat beer
Right,
in a
yeah.
pitcher
Uh-huh.
pouring into it. And then I saw this smelting ball, where you heat metal and then you pour it
Right.
out. I
Yeah.
saw a smelting ball with gold and then it was poured into the beer.
Well, that's weird.
Right. So this is what I saw. No lie. I think I might even have the recording because I recorded a lot of the meditations.
Mhm.
So everyone's sharing their story and everyone's like, "Oh, I saw my great grandmother and blah blah." And I'm sitting there like, I saw beer and
I saw a
like
bunch of
metal.
beer and
Right.
some gold.
Right. Right. So like I let myself go last, and I usually do. I'm just like let everybody go first because my stuff means nothing. Just it's meaningless. It's useless.
Mhm.
So it comes to me, and I go, "Okay, this is what I saw," and I explain exactly what I explained to you.
Mhm.
Everybody's looking at each other like, "What's this weirdo doing here?" The psychic medium, no joke, she goes, I can validate it." She gets up and leaves for a second. Everybody else is looking around. I go, "Guys, I can only tell
Look
you
what
what I
you've
saw." And
done, Mark. You've scared off
right.
the medium.
She comes back with a can. She goes, "I was cleaning off the table. I wasn't sure which table to use, but I used this." And she puts it down, Scotch liquid gold.
Oh, there you go.
She just sprayed the table with Scotch liquid gold before we got there.
Oh,
Like
wow. How
that's how
cool.
it works. And it's got to be something. I just don't know what. And it doesn't make me anything. I just
Yeah.
caught it like an antenna. So I've been kind of chasing that a little bit. And it's been challenging because I'm not it's what I've experienced takes me away from the quote unquote religious God that we're told about as humans,
Right. Yeah.
if that makes sense. So it really conflicts with that struggle of going through.
Now, whenever the other people were, saying, "Hey, I saw my grandma," and all that kind of stuff, right? So, since you had such a different experience, I mean, because I mean, the skeptic in me is like, how many of these people do you think were just kind of, playing the
Going along.
script? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and that is very true, you know?
yeah,
Very true. So, I mean, I've got a couple more stories I'm happy to share, but I'm here to share with you. I wanna get to
yeah.
know you too. But basically, what my thought is, there are these thoughts of how this came to be for me,
Mhm.
and I had a really traumatizing car accident when I was 13 years old.
Okay. See, now this. See, I think this is interesting because I think a lot of times when you have these weird experiences later in life, there's usually something that's happened. Now, a real quick side story is a friend of mine I went to high school with. His mother. I'm trying to think of what happened to her now. So his mother, I think she had like a stroke or some type of brain damage basically. And when she came out of it, she couldn't speak English anymore.
Wow.
She was born in Germany, but she hadn't lived there since a child, and she had this stroke. And whenever she came out of it, she only spoke German. Yet she didn't speak German most of her life.
Wow.
So I mean, that's why. So no one could explain it, and then she had to relearn English,
Right.
which was weird. So this kid, was, I think we were
So it didn't come
probably,
back at some point? It literally had to be completely
no, she had
relearned?
to go back. I mean, it came back quickly, but it wasn't like, the next day, she
Right.
bent over and all of a sudden she spoke English. And like a switch or anything, she had to go back through the process. Now she
Wow.
taught English as a second language, I think. And so we were probably, what, 12, 13, 14, something like that when this happened. And I mean, can you imagine your mother is just speaking German now all of a sudden after you've known her, for 12 years of your life? But anyway, the point is that you mentioned this accident, which you're going to tell us about. Some these things happen, and it's a mystery because the brain is such a mystery, and so forth. So let me hear your situation. You were in a car
Well, what
wreck.
I find interesting what you mentioned as well is, there was a woman who had, some kind of dental surgery,
Hmm.
and she came out of it, and then she had a British accent. And she never
Huh.
had anything like that before in her life, and
That's
there's,
interesting.
like, you can just Google that story on YouTube, and it literally there's stories of her
Yeah.
on TV, where she literally has a British accent. You're like, "She's from Texas, she never left the state,
Yeah,
and she comes
that's
out of
pretty
this
far
surgery."
afield there. Although they do
Yeah,
say
and
actually Southern accents do come from Britain.
yeah,
It's a
you would hear
it's a
some of that, and I
variant
could
of
hear French
British.
too, like the
Yeah.
Southern, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's interesting too, for example, like, for example, not I don't wanna get political on this one, but, uh, Fetterman had the stroke, and he had the aphasia for a while, and you
Mhm.
watch that debate, and you're like, "This guy is unfit," and I watch him now, and I go, "Wow, he sounds much different than he did 4 months ago,"
Right, yeah.
so it does
Yeah,
take
weird.
time, and, how interesting the body can
Yeah,
heal
how it
or
heals
release.
itself and so forth. Yeah, in weird ways.
Yeah.
But so
So, to
you
your
said you were
point,
a kid for an accident when you were 13, you said?
yeah, so to your point, there is a correlation between possibly some trauma and some of this stuff. And it
Mhm.
might be like, the people with imaginary friends and whatnot, like,
Right,
were
yeah.
open to the ideas more because they didn't have maybe it at home or something. Who knows, right? I'm just
Right.
trying to spitball. Like, I'm open to any thought of what this might be, because I really am confused. And it could be a physical thing in some way that creates this in some traumatic way. But so I'm finding this with a lot of people, they've had some kind of trauma. For me, I was 13 years old. I went to a baseball game. It's a very weird story. There were four of us that were supposed to go. Two people backed out. So I was riding along in a cargo van, some old crappy cargo van in 1988. We scalped the tickets. Now, where this is in Philadelphia. So
Mhm.
there's a row of 50 scalpers. So you just randomly drive up to a guy.
Right.
They tell you $5 a ticket or whatever, right? You give them the tickets, they give you the cash, you're in.
Mhm.
So there's a whole row. So when you go to buy them, same thing, right? It's a whole random experience. You just pull up to somebody, they buy your ticket, right?
Right.
So we're there, first inning, second inning. I think second inning, this couple walks in and sits down to the seats next to us. I'm some smarmy little smart ass kid, smart butt kid. I'm like, hey, how much you pay for those tickets? Because we know how much we scalped them for.
Mhm.
So they told us, and it was a woman maybe between 28 and 32, maybe 35, young woman. And I was only 13, so it's kind of hard for me to gauge. But I remember kind of just razzing them a little bit, right?
Mhm.
So on the way home from the car accident, I get ejected from the vehicle. I get transferred. I have an out of body experience where I remember hovering over my body and seeing the flashing blue and red lights and
Mhm.
just fuzziness. Um, that's all I remember from the accident. And then I remember some stuff being done to me in one hospital, but I got transferred from one hospital to a different hospital overnight.
Mhm.
So when you talk about what happened to me and the variance, it keeps adding another layer of probability to this thing that I'm about to share.
Mhm.
I end up falling asleep. I wake up the next morning, and as I wake up, I look and there's a woman sitting there, and it's the woman that bought the scalp ticket.
Hmm.
And I was like that. I literally did like I did like a
Right. What are you
jerk.
doing here?
Right, because it was almost like the last person I saw
Are
before my
are they
accident.
selling tickets for the hospital these days? What's going on?
Yeah, right. So she said she was a doctor at the hospital and she was doing rounds. She recognized me. She saw me till I was awake. She walked out. I never saw her again.
Hmm.
Now, if I put in together the pieces of the other stuff, and if I were to just make a couple loose assumptions, which unfortunately you have to because you don't have proof here,
Mhm.
perhaps she wanted to make sure whatever happened took. I don't
Hmm.
know. Like it could have been a soul exchange, it's things like that. They talk about those things. And I don't know. I will say I've been different in personality and some other things. I was a very different child like than I
Yeah.
am as an adult.
So did you hit your head or
Yeah,
I
I hit
mean,
my head
obviously
pretty
you
good.
hit your
I hit
head in
my head
some
right.
le but yeah, okay.
I don't know if
Yeah,
you
I
can
was
see it. I don't know if
yeah,
there's a
okay.
football scar. But I hit my head and I broke my femur. So I broke my just above
Oh,
my
okay.
knee on my side. So
Oh
it
my.
it was certainly yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I just don't understand.
But
And my
that region of your head's not a personality region necessarily, but
right.
that we don't know. I mean,
Right.
typically
Right.
you hit your frontal lobe is where your they think your personality tends to lie, but
Right.
um
Now, this is where
the
I'm gonna take this is where I'm gonna take a weird step, and I'm not once again, I don't prescribe to this. I am open to any idea because we don't have proof one way or another, right? So I'm not
Mhm,
gonna say that this is what happened. But they do speak of this soul switch. And
mhm,
if I recall leaving, I recall hovering, and if that switch happened at that moment, it might explain a change in something, the way I
mhm.
am. Some things might turn on differently and other who knows how the biological electrochemical stuff happens, right? The energy
Right,
matter
right.
exchange. It's just really hard because it gets bougie, but I do want to be scientific about it because
So did
I'm
were
not.
you was it a market change in personality? I mean, obviously, if you're a 13-year-old kid, you're a little smart ass no matter what, but,
Yeah, not as
uh
much for me, but I got more recluse. I became more
Oh, okay.
recluse.
Yeah.
I was a lot more outgoing. And the person very similar to my situation had a very similar accident as well.
Mhm.
And he went the other way. He went from like a wallflower to like being very open and gregarious.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
So that
interesting.
does yeah. So what's so if so do you want to hear more crazy or I mean
Oh, no, I mean, this is all very fascinating.
well, because I'm happy to share like how the journey
I
happens because like it's these little steps that were like
well, I'm trying
guideposts
to
and the puzzle makes it
let
fit.
me pull you back just a second. So I'm trying to
Yeah,
think about
absolutely.
the soul switch idea. So, because this is something that, is interesting on a lot of levels, but I wonder how you would, um
Make that happen.
how you know how you would be aware. So basically, what would happen?
Right.
So would you did you whenever you woke up like is it like I don't all my memories were fuzzy, or and it was kind of like a or I remembered things that didn't really happen to me and I talked about them and then people were like what are you talking about we didn't even go to that game I don't know what you guys are you know what I mean
Yeah, it's
so
it's a good point. Yeah, is it like
because
a
there's got
memory
to
thing
be
along with the energy, right? Is the
you can't
memory
have
does the memory
both right
accompany the soul, right? In
yeah
a weird way?
in a
Yeah,
weird
those are
way
all great questions, and I was, like I said, this is a concept that people have put out there for me.
hmm
I think I actually kind of had almost left and came back, but I don't know. Who knows, right? Like I don't know. But something changed in me generally, and going back to that moment, seeing how who could have bought a scalp ticket from a random person that I scalped it to, and then after 2 switches from a hospital after a car accident, the next morning
hmm
be the first person to wake up to,
right
seems very in a
the
city
odds
of a
are
million people,
yeah
right?
odds aren't in your favor on that one
Yeah, it just seems
yeah
weird, and then never to see again. Like it was like the way in hindsight it looks weird. It's not weird when it happened.
right
It's weird now looking back on it, reflecting on it.
now
So
uh, do you think that you know um like I had an experience when I was really ill that I thought I saw my cousin, but it wasn't my cousin. You know what I
right,
mean? So I
right,
was like talking to him, and it was like I was much younger. I have an older cousin, and it was actually somebody dealing with a carpet in my parents' house. But I like, oh yeah, my cousin was
Was that
here,
person not
and
there?
yeah, and then they weren't though. But in
Right,
my head, I was like, oh yeah, he's out there helping fix something. Um,
right.
do you think that it was just mistaken identity,
A
or
vision,
you
yes.
really
So
were
my mom walked in when she was there, and then
okay?
she
So you have
introduced her, and then she
corroboration.
left.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mom knows that she saw her, but my mom wasn't at the game, so she couldn't validate it was her, if that would
Right.
make sense. So
Right.
I
But
saw
she was
her,
a person
she
that was
stood
out
up
of
when
it.
my
Yeah.
yeah, I saw her, she stood up when my mom came in, she said, "Yeah, I was at the game." She explained how we crossed paths, and then she
Okay.
left, walked away. Now, once again, I was 13, perhaps I misremembered that, to be honest, Bob.
No.
I'm
Well,
not gonna
I don't
this
doubt.
isn't
I'm
for me
just
to hold
saying
on
that
to,
that's one of those
No,
kind
they're
of things.
great questions. We
And
need to
everybody
vet it
does that
because
to you because
right,
anytime you have an odd experience, it seems like 9 times out of 10, everybody's gonna say, "Are you sure? You really
and
think that how?" You know what I mean?
you
Yeah.
better be darn sure, or you better at least
Yeah.
ask the questions, right? These are absolutely look, I question it daily, I still try to figure it out,
Yeah,
to be
well,
completely honest.
and that's the hard part is because then as time goes, then with that questioning, then you have doubt and doubt and doubt and doubt and doubt. And so then
Yeah.
you end up doubting yourself when, maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah,
Uh,
it becomes interesting, and like I said, because of the experience I've had and because of the opinions I have about people who have the experiences I've had,
mhm.
um, I try to be careful. If you notice, it's like I don't practice that as like a job because
Yeah.
it's like I don't feel confident in in whatever it is for me, but it
Mhm.
has happened, right? If that makes
Yeah.
sense.
So do you
So yeah, good.
find that I'm trying to think of how to phrase this.
I take no offense, so please
No,
ask
no,
like
I'm not trying
super
to I'm trying to get my thoughts together, you know what I mean?
right.
So,
Yeah.
do you find then that you are more believing in others, I guess would be the thing. Since you've had this, so do you find that whenever you talk to somebody else who had something, are you more likely to be um believe them rather than not believe them, given no matter what it is, like somebody says, I just saw the devil run by or something like that, and you're like, oh really, where'd he go? And as opposed to other people who be like, okay, come on, enough with
Right.
your nonsense. um
I'm a skeptic, but I encourage people. So, because like, don't people have skills that you don't have? Like, I can't play
oh
an
yeah,
instrument to save my
yeah,
life. So, who's to say that part of somebody's brain isn't an instrument that got tuned a different way growing up? I mean, it's funny because we talk about like racial difference, but the variance within each race is bigger than the variance between the
oh
races.
yeah,
You know,
the racial thing
like
is,
there's
it just,
more difference between people than there is between the races of people. Like
yeah,
it's crazy. So,
it,
you know,
yeah,
I am more
silly.
open to listening to asking them. But this is what I am. I'm a skeptic because I still question myself. I'm telling
Mhm.
you what I saw. That doesn't mean I know even that it happened. I still question it,
So
whether it
would
was
you think
connected
there's
away.
more believing if it happened to the person as opposed to the person saw something, or are you is that difference matter? So like
Both
if I
are
saw
experiences. So if
something.
someone saw a UAP that was like
Mhm.
disc shaped or something, like that's an
Yeah, or
experience that was
whatever.
visual. Right?
Yeah.
So that one's different than someone who had a sight. Like what I saw is like I just saw something happen, and then a week later it happened. Like
Right.
they're both special. They're both sensory, right?
Mhm.
They're senses. So, and then they do get interpreted. We are human. We are flawed. So we're going to perceive within our life how that information came in, right?
Yeah.
So
Interesting.
yeah. So going down the rabbit hole is still an interesting thing. I started going to seminar after seminar after seminar. I met a gentleman in Phoenix, Arizona, Scottsdale. His name's Dr. Emil Faith. I'm happy to share his name.
Mhm.
Faithe. His daughter, I think
Is
her
that
name's
really his
Amy.
name? I'm already skeptical.
Yes.
See?
It is Faithe, and he may have changed it to that, but his daughter's also named that, and she's
Yeah.
actually like a new age artist. You could look her up. I think it's Amy Faith,
That's
like
a good
AIME.
marketing piece right there.
It's a great one. It's like what's that? The newscaster Crystal Ball. Like, come on, Crystal Ball,
Right.
really? Come on.
Yeah.
And it's funny because my psychic medium's Crystal, but it's not Ball. It's just
Oh,
something
okay.
else, right?
Phew.
But Crystal
That's
is
a
a made up.
maiden name.
It's not her real name, right? Same thing, same thing. Right? Or you know what? I don't want to slander her, so I don't know if it's her real name.
Oddly enough, it was Crystal Head Vodka that she changed it.
There, there it is. So, so I went to this thing called "Are You an Empath?" And I don't know if you've ever
Mhm.
heard what the term empath is.
Oh yeah, I'm familiar. Yeah.
So there's you can Google this thing. It's like the 27 traits of an empath. And you know how these stupid quizzes are stupid things. So you're going scrolling through, and you have to be honest with yourself. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I check like 24 of the boxes. Now, the
Yeah.
things I don't is like I don't have a problem with meat or like or trees. Like nature doesn't do it for me. And like I don't feel the animal I eat. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I don't get that. So
Yeah. That's
I'm a big
interesting.
carnivore. Yeah. So there's this whole list. So I looked through it. So I started going on like meetups and stuff around the valley, around Phoenix, Arizona. And there's enough around here because we have the Sedona with these red rocks and all these vortices and all this crazy weird. You know the QAnon shaman, for example? Remember that guy from January
Uh,
6th? The
oh,
January 6th guy
yeah, yeah,
with the
yeah.
headgear and
Okay.
his
Yeah, yeah,
thing? Yeah,
yeah.
he's running for Congress in Arizona.
Oh,
So there you
really?
go. Yeah, so
Interesting.
welcome. He's like a shaman. He's literally a shaman. So I go to this seminar and there's 6 women and me.
You think if he was a shaman, he would know not to be there.
Yeah, you would think, right?
Or he would
You would
say,
think.
I'm gonna show up for the photo op and then I'm gonna skedaddle before they
And then
start arresting
skedaddle, get
people.
out of here. There's a whole story
Sorry, I
behind
had to
that
throw
though
that
too,
in
isn't
there.
there? No, it's a good point.
I'm
So,
waiting for Mark's lottery number picking abilities to kick in so
you
we
know,
can, take
every
care of
time
that business. I'm
everyone
sorry,
does
go
that.
ahead.
It
Yeah.
always comes down to that, doesn't it? The lottery numbers, those darn pesky lottery numbers.
Yeah.
So, so I'm sitting at this thing, and he's doing like he's talking about what empaths are and how he's one and whatever. And he's also what's called like one of these holistic people where he can do like a reading of your body
Right,
and then
yeah,
like kind of tell
chakras
you
and
what's
all that
wrong
good
with
kind
you.
of stuff.
Yeah, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. He touches you. Okay, so this is where it gets just super crazy. I'm super critical. I'm super hyper about like I don't know. There's this woman named Esther Hicks who channels her husband allegedly and some guy
Mhm.
Abraham. I look at
Oh,
the timbre. I look at the way they speak, how they repeat. If they repeat, sometimes they don't. You know what I mean? Something smells
mhm.
off on
Right,
the way they speak, right?
right,
So that's what I look for because I used to play poker, so I was very much into tells.
right.
How people aren't exactly being genuine all the time.
Mhm.
Inconsistencies stick out, right? So
Or
he goes,
over-consistencies. Mm.
right, exactly,
Yep.
right. So he goes, I'm going to give everybody a medical reading. So he goes, everybody, just go one by one, and I let all the ladies go first. Now
Uh-huh.
we were in a sensitivity training, so I'm crying already. Like it's
Oh
already
gosh,
like,
it's terrible.
you know what I mean? It's already like,
Right,
I'm
you're
already
on the
feeling like
edge. Yeah.
I'm feeling like an 8-year-old with a skin knee, if you know what I mean. So,
They're
so
spraying
he goes
Bactine on you all over the place and you're crying.
exactly. So one by one, this woman, oh, you had a heart problem. Oh my gosh, you had lung, your kidney. He just went by way of wonder, like, wow, how did you know that? And you just
Mhm.
heard him say this stuff, and everybody was some kind of health issue.
Right.
Something was something, with something, and I'm like, he's going to tell me I'm diabetic. Big
Mhm.
deal. Like that's literally he's going to tell me I'm diabetic. No big deal, right?
Right.
So I go up and I walk up to him. I'm the last person to go. All these women have gone. He's told them all this weird health shit that's just really unique, like just not unique. It's very generic, right? Seems like
Yeah.
he
Breast cancer,
he
breast cancer, breast cancer, heart.
right. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, heart, lung, all that, liver, whatever, right? He goes and he touches me and he flips out. He pulls
Hmm.
back and he gasps and he's like, and he like I'm like at this sensitivity training, I'm crying and I just broke the doctor. I just broke the guy. Like, I'm like, what did I do? I look around the room. I'm like, what did I do? What did I like? I had no idea what was happening.
Mhm.
the guy like freaks out and he composes himself and he goes, and I get a little emotional now because like I just don't understand it. It's not because I
Mhm.
believe it really. I'm confused. He says, "Oh, Mark, you have a lot of energy. You hold on a second. I can't hold on." And he like had to compose himself for a few minutes.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting there. Everyone else is just watching us, and he didn't do this with anyone else. And I
Mhm.
don't understand why I shouldn't have been the one that he did this with. There's no reason for this, right? So
Mhm.
he composes himself. He touches my hands again. I'm from Philadelphia. I live in Phoenix, pretty far away, right? Pretty easy.
Yeah. Other
He
side of the
touched me. He
world.
goes, right. He goes, your your family's coming through and you're homesick. They miss you and you really miss them. And I've got some troubles, some stuff going on at home, like everyone
Mhm.
does. Everyone has house stuff, right?
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, my family's in Pennsylvania, 2,000 miles away. Of course I'm homesick. Like, I just, I came at it with such a glib, like, attitude. And he grabs my hand, he holds it tight. He goes, no, your soul family misses you. You're not from
Mm.
here. And he actually tells me, he goes, you're from Sirius. He goes, it's okay. I am too.
Mm.
And I'm
Is
just like, what the F, right? Like, just that's it. I don't know
You're
what to
from
make of that.
Sirius, so like the star, huh?
Yeah. So there are these Syrians allegedly are a being, um, that are part of the group. There are these
Mhm.
Arcturians and Palladians.
Right.
Look, this is what people talk about. I'm happy to talk about it without this is like Aristotelian, right? Like it's the mark of a curious mind to discuss an idea without adopting it, right? I'm happy to
Sure.
share what might
So
be. I don't
so
know what.
why would so okay, so they said, so you're kinda like, like Americans. So 2 Syrians are
Yeah.
there in this situation. I mean, I you wouldn't be necessarily related, right? So,
Right.
but
Right.
but if you're 2,
Well,
so,
if you think
do they
about like
mean
a
that
home planet,
by do they mean that you actually physically came from there, or that ancestrally somebody at some point in your lineage is from there? I guess that's my question. Because
right?
reason I say that is because you talk about the out of body soul switching thing, and so then
Yeah,
that could be a point that you've already introduced where something could have happened, or is it something that goes even further back?
that's what made me think that question, Bob, and that's the question, right? Could
Yeah.
that soul switch have been this? Like, say there's a technology of an advance. Okay, so we in the last 100 years, how far have we come in a civilization? Pretty far.
Yeah.
Think of it
I mean,
like a
we could be
thousand times a
further.
thousand.
Yeah, we could be
Right.
further.
But think about 1,000 more years than 100, like 10 times what we've done in 100 in the recent with
Mhm.
the recent exponential growth of our technology. It goes
Mhm.
pretty far. So say there's some civilizations that just happen to have been around longer. So who's to say they can't do that technologically? I don't know. That's one theory, right?
Yeah,
The
no,
other theory.
I have a friend that does a show online and so forth, and he thinks maybe that we're just we're just the zoo, and you can come and be in people for a day, kind of a
Oh,
situation.
interesting. You
Yeah,
can actually
so
like a kind of simulation, like put on the head helmet and
yeah, it would be Avatar-esque kind of
yeah,
thing. But this we talked about this before Avatar, but where yeah, where we're
sure.
the reason that we live the lives that we live, which is, nothing's really too good, nothing's really too bad, right?
Right.
There is a certain amount of suffering that everyone has. I mean, everybody suffers in some way, shape, or form, right? But it's
Right.
almost like it's set up that way for others beyond here to come in and take the ride, as it were. And
Right.
just like you go on a roller coaster because you want some thrills, but you don't want to get hurt, you would go and become an earthling for a week because you want, I guess, the drudgery of working in multi-level marketing or something. I don't know, but
Well, it kind of lends to the simulation theory in your point,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
In that unique
Eh,
way.
but no, it's biological still. But yeah, then you
Yeah. Yeah.
and
You
that could
just kind of
account
go
for
through the eyes. Like you're able to
yeah,
like zoom in and kind of go it through like
yeah,
point of view, like almost astral
right, yeah.
projecting.
and and
Really
and
interesting.
and you live their life, maybe even at the same time, because we don't we have memories, and some of them are strong and some of them aren't strong. And I mean, there's week you couldn't tell me what you did 4 years ago, 4 days ago.
Right. Good
And
point.
so who knows what was happening. But I mean, that's why I'm asking, do you think that this is something that is recent or in the past? Because
Yeah.
it makes a kind of a big difference in as far as you're concerned. Because
Right.
if it's recent, then maybe your kind of a your real person might be suppressed in there still. And if
Right.
it's in the past, then that's a whole other connotation as far as
Yeah.
genetics and so forth.
Well,
I
I mean, all
find
your
it
points are
interesting.
great. They're great
He
questions, right?
he touched you, right, and I always wonder about this, right? So just to put it out, I don't like anybody touching me, and I would never go to
Right,
one of
but
these
it was
things
like
for the
he
mere
asked, like
fact
he
that they
had his
would touch
hands
me.
out like this, and he asked me to put my hands on top.
I
So
know
he had his
it
hands
doesn't
yeah,
matter
but I get what
for
you're
me,
saying. Right.
and so
'Cause you just wanna interlock hands, don't you, Bob? You just wanna
no, no, I want you to be on. I want you to be comfortably away from me. And so then, but so I wonder what that is. There an explanation as to why? Why is that?
he's
Why is that
yeah.
better than not? I guess is
Oh,
my
well, I've
question.
I've noticed that I can transfer, like, healing through touch
Hmm.
and, just energy transfer. There was a gentleman who eventually took his own life, whose life I saved one night and never met him before, and younger than me, young kid, 24 at the time,
Hmm.
and, he was talking about struggles, and something compelled me to put my hand on his knee, and it just, like, took it all away from him. There's
Really?
this weird thing about it there's a thing about a touch, like 5-gram touch,
Hmm.
that there's, like, a pressure that is, like, this perfect amount that on the body, it just feels like it kind of relieves everything. So,
Interesting. So yeah,
there
I
is
would
some
say
I
that.
mean,
Yeah.
there's touch with babies too, holding babies
Sure.
and that
Yeah, babies. Yeah, I see where
can
that
work.
is because that becomes a nurturing kind of thing. I
And
think once
intimacy,
you get to
intimacy
a
with
certain
touch.
point. Oh,
Yeah.
well, we're not
So
even gonna talk Mark, we're not
no, no, but
talking about fake.
I get where your point is. Totally. He wasn't rubbing me up and down, he
Yeah,
touched my hand.
okay. I
Touched
didn't
my finger.
were you let me okay, wait a minute. I'm a mandated reporter. Were you, molested in some way?
Yeah, show me where the doctor touched you on your
That's
fingertips.
right. No, but I always find it interesting that that touch becomes one of these things because in my, existence, I avoid it, uh, because touch is to me is painful. So
Yes.
if somebody, especially anybody I don't know, so if somebody I don't know were to put their hand on me, it would be like as if they were putting a hot iron on me. Okay.
Yes, and I
Like I was getting
completely
branded or
understand.
something. And so I don't like that. So I always find it interesting that a lot of these kind of things have to do with touch. Because
What's good about that is where someone doesn't just randomly walk up to you and touch you. What's beautiful about it, and it's not like once again, it is a little bit of Fruit Loop wind chime. Come on, this is a
Mhm.
weird world to talk about, like
Right.
incense burning and all this stuff. But like the world is very much comes from a lot of people with trauma who've had a history of like abuse and such, because they're
Mhm.
generally kind people who've been abused their whole life. So a lot
Yeah.
of it's consent. Like, may I touch you? Like, may I put my hand on yours?
Yeah.
And when you ask and they consent, it changes the approach, right? For
Okay.
sure. So, and you can also say no, right? So, even to that, it also gives you the barrier. So, I do find it's not like I'm going to touch you now. So,
Well,
I'll
no, I
heal you, Jesus, kind
I
of.
realize that it's all on the up and up, but and maybe they just don't have many people who don't want to be touched in the group is my probably the case because
There are
going
people who
into
don't want
it
to be
this is
touched.
probably going to happen. So
There are absolutely people who do not want the physical, any of the
really,
physical piece.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, just like it is, everyone's variant, right? In between, within the world. So,
So then
yes.
do you? So I have the question I would ask is so you were there and it was obviously upsetting and you were emotional and so forth. I mean, do you, I guess you feel that going through that process must be some type of catharsis for you to get that emotional.
Yeah, well, I didn't expect that to happen.
Okay.
I was just trying to get answers. Like this thing was just like, oh, this is an empath meeting. I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
whatever that means. Like, just tell
Right.
me. I'm just a confused person who saw things that I still don't believe I like. I to your point, they had to. I generated them in my head,
Mhm.
or if not, if not, it's an antenna thing, right? So to close the loop
Right.
on your point, was it whatever before? So say it was a soul switching and a futuristic old civilization can do that, beam
Mhm.
one personality in for another. Who knows?
Yeah.
Now,
Ho
to your point, I would
Hopefully it's not
you
prison for them. Let's hope that.
right. Well, you were thinking like live the life in a day. I'm thinking I'm here to I'm not saying this as a fact. I'm saying my current path is like, I think I was sent here to observe this and send back like what it feels like to be a human at the end of times. I know that sounds actually crazy,
Mhm.
but it feels really weird lately. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like things have been feeling weird. So this is just once again, I'm happy to talk about it because this doesn't change the way I don't approach the world like that. I approach the world like how I actually live it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Not how I assume it might be. So it could have been genetic too, right? They talk about genetic planning. Humans are a
Right.
genetic leap from the chimp. I mean, they
Right.
really are.
Yeah.
We are. So that's the two ways you could do it. And maybe Syrian was the seed, and there's a connected seed once you're awake to it. I don't know, man.
Yeah, well, and maybe, you never know. The, because there's, I use the word zeitgeist, but there's, other words that I can't think of off the top of my head here, but, that essentially, um, all knowledge flows constantly to everyone, but everyone can't accept it, right?
Right.
We're kind of like faulty receivers, if you will,
Yeah.
and everything is always happening, and you have access to these things if you know how to access them, but most people don't, or can only access very small portions of what's happening, what's going on, and you know what you're talking about with these kind of flashes and things like that. That really kind of gets to that a little bit because again there's the theory that all time isn't linear. Time happens is happening all at once. So then the future is the future, the past isn't the past, the present isn't the present. It's all just happening. And you're experiencing it in a linear fashion, but it happens instantaneously constantly. And so then therefore that would feed into that aspect of things too, because you think, oh, it's a future event, but the reality was it was all just happening anyway. And you were able to glean that piece of information out there. So now you've been to
Those are
several of
two
these
great
things.
points. I'd like
It's,
to address that in two ways, if I could,
oh, sure, go
really
ahead.
quickly, if I may. Just before we lose a train of thought on that thought, because that thought is the perfect thought. Um, this I see time as two ways. So quantum could be my visions are I see a probabilistic outcome, and it might be one of the stronger ones,
Hmm.
and then it happens or doesn't happen, right? Because it's probabilistic. Could be that, or to your point, it's all happened. We just haven't lived it out linearly yet. So
Hmm.
along that axis, if you can jump around along it, you see it, and that's where you get the vision, and then you live it linearly, and then it happens. And that would explain the lack of context. Sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's a week, but it's not outside of a week, and it's sometimes it's really quick because I will
Hmm.
make specific references to very obscure things. I'll put on a random television show and they'll reference it, like Pop
Hmm.
Tart or the thing with the ball and the thing with the clackers or whatever,
Right. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
weird stuff like that. I'll say throughout a day. It's like I see a pop and
Metronome.
then yeah, metronome. Thank you. And then I put on a television show and then like that's like the thing, the
Mhm.
topic or the
Right.
and it just doesn't make sense like that. So it could be a quantum probabilistic, or to your point, it happened and we just haven't lived it linearly.
Right.
Now, if it's happened and we haven't lived it linearly, we got a lot of problems because I saw a really bad probabilistic outcome.
Hmm.
And since I saw that, I've been pretty haunted by it. It's global. It's really not good. And I think you can assume what it might be. And basically, just end of everything. And
Right.
now I've been trying to fight to stop that. So I've become very anti-war, and very recently I've kind of shifted a little bit to that
Yeah.
libertarian anti-war type
Let me
stance.
ask you a question. And you talk about being older and so forth. Did you have to hide under your desk for nuclear drills?
I remember the days, but I was born in 74.
Okay.
So
So you probably weren't quite there. It was very close
not
to that.
quite, just at the end of it. How about yourself?
Oh yeah, so we did do the end of the desk nuclear drill, and it was the most ridiculous thing. Even as a child, I'm like, why? What is the point of this? You know what I mean? We're not going to survive this one, kids. But
It
anyway,
sounds like you question a
uh,
lot too, right? Growing up.
yeah, I'm like, all right, I'll get under the desk, but you know what? This isn't going to help anything. But anyway, but with those thoughts, so then you were around for the day after, which was a big movie that they hyped.
Correct.
Was in the
Early
'80s.
80s, I believe.
Yeah, and so forth. So I find this interesting, and this is just another parallel here, a little tangent, parallel tangent. So I haven't had it in a number of years, but whenever I was in from when I was probably in my teens to in my 20s, I would have a nuclear dream, right? Everything's destroyed. And it's always a future dream, right? I think it's future. And it revolves around, the end of everything. I had just written it off to being, and I mean, this is a repeatable dream that's the same dream, right? And I'm not talking about Terminator stuff or anything like that,
Right. You're just
but
talking like
I'm
literally
talking
you
about,
see.
yeah, my
Can you
experience.
explain? Can you describe like the what you see? Like just the
Um,
picture?
the weird thing is a lot of times it has to do around school, and that's why I kind of, and I'm not in school at that point in my life, in my 20s and so forth. I mean, and this is like grade school kind of thing. And so that's why I thought, well, they made us do these stupid things, and then there's all this hype about it. And so I perseverate, and therefore it comes back around for a while. Now, like I said, it's been, a long time since I've had this, but it was quite prevalent and would happen. And you wake up, in a cold sweat kind of a situation, and we're like, oh my gosh, I hope this doesn't come to pass. And and
Yeah.
then the desolation, wandering around, with nobody around kind of a situation. You're lost, you're alone, things are gone, everything's different, obviously, and so forth like that. And so all these kind of feelings, right? And it could easily
Yeah.
be interpreted as a stress dream that has a nuclear holocaust
Yeah.
overlay.
Problem is, it wasn't a dream. It was in my
Right.
conscious state.
Yeah, it's well, yeah. So, but
Yeah.
mine always happened. I always assumed it was a dream because I think I went to sleep and then I woke up and I had this kind of feeling.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but no, I always wrote it off to being, having grown up in this environment that
Hmm.
kind of was really. I mean, it was a. If you think about it, it was really quite mean for them to be pressing all this on kids during that time period. They were, I think the idea was they were trying to be positive, but it was really quite negative.
Right. Well, the climate change has replaced the nuclear holocaust. If you
Right,
notice, it's
right. I'm
literally the
sure kids
exact
dream about that
replacement.
maybe.
Because there needs to be some kind of ultimate fear for them to control us like that. Now, to your point,
Right.
yes, I I- and I did not have that. Of course, I grew up with Reagan, so
Mhm.
74. So Carter, it would have been 2 years with what's his name, Ford, and
Ford,
then
right, yeah.
Carter, which I was
Yeah.
what, six then. Okay, so
Yeah,
now
Carter
it
was
would have
in
been
70,
Reagan. I really would have known.
76, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so I grew up kind of with Reagan. Now, Reagan was a Cold War, not, tear down
Yeah,
this wall, Mr. Gorbachev, tear
yeah,
down this wall.
yep.
Well, in my day,
That's
that
Star
guy.
Wars. That was,
And yeah, Star Wars program, all
yeah,
that
yeah.
stuff, and
Mhm.
Star Wars itself, uh,
Yeah, all of it.
from 78, 80, and 82, right?
Yeah,
83.
exactly.
So, I remember Return of the Jedi with being Revenge of the Jedi the first time, and then them
Right.
changing the posters. Remember that?
Uh-huh.
You remember that?
Oh,
Sure.
yeah.
So I grew up with that, but it wasn't. There was no terror of that for me. It wasn't. I was patriotic. I was actually tried to get in the military. I couldn't get in because I had the car accident. My leg was 3/4 of an inch shorter from the accident. It just grew weird and funky, so
Oh,
I
wow.
couldn't get in the military. But I was a military kid, but I was never had this literal vision that I had was recent, and it was coming out of it was before the Israel thing, but
Mhm,
definitely from Ukraine. Like it felt like, and it felt like us initiated actually, which is
mhm.
really, really astonishing. But
Weird.
yeah, anyway, so I had this little thing happen, and but but that's the thing is like I had that vision, but here's one that I had during the middle of a concert when I was conscious, completely conscious. I'm standing there listening to a song, and all of a sudden I have a vision. I literally kind of zone out, and I have a vision of a gun barrel upside down going in my mouth,
Mhm.
and I can feel the metal of the barrel scraping the top of my teeth,
Mm,
like my top teeth as it goes in my mouth upside down. And then a voice said, "Do it before you change your mind."
mm.
No idea what that is. Like, literally was completely in a conscious state and had this thing,
Weird.
So
Now you said you haven't
that
dropped acid or anything, so
no, no, unfortunately, I wish I could explain it that way, to be honest. At least it would give me an explanation, right? So,
Right. Well, I mean, that's what people would ask you. They'd be like, "Have you
right. It's
any
true.
LSD or
Once again, I'm sharing
more than
what
one
I
occasion too?" But yeah.
right, and I'm sharing my senses. I'm not telling you what it is fact.
Right,
You
right,
can
right.
clearly tell I'm like a lucid guy
That's
talking
weird.
about it.
And the weird part is that typically when you're conscious, you can have a vision, but it's hard to have the other senses interact, I think. That's what throws it off is the fact that you're like, I tasted it, I felt it, I heard
Yeah, it
it.
became like a daydream, though, in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Because typically, you know, when you're unconscious dreaming, then everything is game, right? But
right,
when you're consciously dreaming, it seems like you leave out senses,
right,
um, because well, in one regard, you have to because you have to stand up and you have to navigate, and so you leave out some of these other senses because they're actually engaged in the moment, as opposed to when you're sleeping where nothing is really that engaged. So, huh?
right, absolutely. Yeah.
So, do you think it was a premonition of something in the future?
Yeah, I thought maybe it was in the moment. Maybe it was maybe I can imagine this. The reason what I see is what I see is probably because I would guess the quote unquote darkness, and I guess the darkness is only relative to what's good, right? And we only know bad from contrast, I guess, right? Like
Hmm.
you hit your head against the wall and then you stop. Well, stopping is a contrast to doing it.
Hmm.
So not doing it is good and doing it is bad, right? In that context.
Right.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
No, that makes
okay.
sense. Yeah.
So to use that kind of context, like I don't know. You know what I mean? Like it's
So then,
I have no idea.
whenever you came
Right.
out of
But
it, would you just
I would think
enjoy the
that
concert
oh,
then, or
my point
or
was, yeah, my point is that I think the evil thoughts, the ideas, the darkness is a stronger energy than the others. So it makes sense that that would come through easier than the later stuff.
hmm, maybe.
Or I'm tuned to it, right? But that wouldn't explain like the Dr. Seuss one and the other one, like the
Right.
fun ones
Yeah.
that I have, right? So I think it's just a thing that happens, and
Were
sometimes
you listening to
I
a
hit it
death
or
metal
don't.
concert? Was it a death metal concert?
No, I'll actually share who it was. It was Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure who.
Yeah,
I don't even know who that is, to be honest with
he
you.
did a
So,
song called Cecilia and the Satellite. It's a really pretty song.
okay.
It's
Oh,
in the
okay.
radio. It's on the radio. You heard it, and it's
I
about
probably
his
heard
daughter.
it, and I didn't, yeah, register too much.
And You're the
I'm just
Sky.
saying because
It's
death
in like a
metal would
bunch
do
of
it.
like kids movies and stuff. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, and so are you familiar with the concept of twin flame by any chance? Have you ever heard that?
Twin flame, like, is it have to do with some kind of duality or something, or
Yeah, like a partner in your life that you would meet that's like the opposite of your soul, like the literal mirror opposite of you.
oh, okay, no, okay.
But
No.
you're connected
Mm,
in that inexorable way of like soul, like eternal connections. I don't know if you've ever heard of
mm.
stuff like
No,
that. I'm not going to
I've
talk
not
about
gone down this road then.
it. Yeah. So if there are these concepts called twin flame, I'm happy to talk about it in the future if you
Yeah,
ever
no,
look it up
no,
and
no,
are
go
interested.
ahead.
But well, basically what it is like you meet people in your life that you just know you've known forever.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be male or female. It doesn't have to be romantic. It could be friendship. It could even be actually like archetypal enemy type, like arch enemy type person.
Okay.
And the thing is, that person that you look at, you see the worst in you by looking at them. Like it's like looking at the mirror at yourself. Like you see your inadequacies in them. It's almost like a
Hmm.
projection.
No, I've
But
never
it's a
gone down this. No.
okay. So there's a soul connection, and once again, you could look it up. Just type in twin flame, and you'll hear all crazy stuff about it. I'm happy to share about it. Once again, this
Yeah,
is
no, go right ahead. I'm
what I
curious.
experienced. Yeah. So I had a past life regression, and in the past life, if you've ever heard, what happens is you're supposedly go back in time to past like lives that you've lived, or
Right.
you know
Yeah.
things that you live. A lot of people were kings and
Right.
Napoleonic. I was Napoleon or Caesar. Like get the f
Right.
out of here. Come on, man. All right.
Yeah.
So
Nobody says I was driving the chuck wagon and fixing
right,
meals every night and hating it.
I was a cab driver in the 50s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So this is what happened. So I'm going to share the two experiences I had.
Okay.
They're crazy. They're not of this world, and I'm happy to share it. So once again, the recording went wonky, and I'll share it with you. It's not recorded. What a shock! That the one thing that just sounds crazy. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like one of those things that just absolutely frustrates me that you can't piece them all together all the time. So
Sure.
the first the first life that I went back to was the one right before this. What it felt like, and it was pitch black, and all I was like a purple mist, like a non-corporeal mist. And I was
Mm.
interacted with another corporeal mist, like, just
Mm.
fog connected like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
It felt absolutely peaceful and the most harmonious. I was at the most peace I ever felt. And I was in a meditative state,
Mhm.
kind of. I was like almost hypnotic, right? And I just felt at peace. And then I felt myself getting pulled away from that other thing,
Mhm.
right? And the woman's asking me, the guided meditator's like, why are you coming here? Why are you coming here? And I remember a single tear just like trickling on the corner of my eye. And I'm like, they're making me.
Mhm.
I said, they're making me. And I'm getting pulled away from the thing that I
Mhm.
need, whatever it was. I don't know how to explain it, right? So I I'm dating and I meet this woman. And the instant we meet, it's like one of those.
Mhm.
Everybody's had that. Right? You know what I mean? Just like instant.
Yeah.
So, well, what it turns out is like I have visions of times with her in past lives that I've had hanging
Mm.
out, like weird. And in some past lives, I did not treat her well. To be
Yeah.
clear, like I was a relative in one, I was a relationship in another, and this one we had started a relationship, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
So anyway, what's interesting, I had my car accident on a date, and her birthday is exactly 1 week after my car accident.
Hmm.
And when I think about me getting pulled here and leaving I think she was the other thing that I left, and she came down a week later. I know
Oh,
that sounds just absolutely. Once again, it's me putting pieces
that's
together of
weird.
other things that I've heard, right?
So, when you
So
go into these past life things, right? So,
yeah,
how do you what makes you so sure that it's you?
it's not. That's the thing. It doesn't. If it's PO, I mean, it's POV, right? So
Right.
it's not. It's sensational. So, well, like, trust me. This is okay. So here, so
Well,
in the
I just
past
wonder
life,
I'm wondering
yeah,
what they what the
right,
because some people seem to be so like, I mean, just
right,
not just the popular thing is Shirley MacLaine is very positive that
right.
these things,
And it can be
but just,
completely influenced, right? Like
yeah,
you're in a what's that called? Suggestive state too, right?
right,
To your
yeah,
point. Okay,
yeah,
so here's an interesting one. So in the past life, and to your point, I can't answer what I can tell you is what the sensation was, and it felt like POV. Like to
right,
your point, I put on the headset for a minute and
mhm,
was looking through that body or through
right,
that life. And I'll share the second one in a second,
Okay.
just to close the loop on this one because this one's just crazy. But we were talking about POV senses. Oh crap. Anyway, so wait, what was the question again, Bob?
No, so in the past lives, my question was, how can you be sure that it's
That
you?
it's me,
And
right?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
as
So
being in that past life, as opposed to maybe you're just
yes,
floating in the ether and you just happen, oh, that's, Sid's past life. It's not mine,
yes,
but
this
yeah.
is great. Okay. So what it is I've had other experiences that kind of puzzle piece together. So in this past life, the woman asks me, "What is your name?"
Hmm.
Or what is the other thing's name? And I said Isis. And I'm like, why would I say Isis? Like I'm thinking, like literally while I'm kind of in this semi-suggestive state, I'm like, Isis, is this
Right.
weird? Because I obviously we know what ISIS is, right? And
Right.
then she goes, what is your name or her name? And says, I said Aria. And I said Aria. And I'm like, I go to Vegas a lot. And I'm like, oh my God, Aria just opened. Did I just think of Aria? Like, is this like literally I'm questioning myself actually as I'm going through this, right?
Right.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
We're a
So
little stutter, but
so
we're still going.
oh, okay. So what happened was I'll go back to the past life regression, but after the past life regression, I met another psychic medium who was telling me about a past life that he saw me as some Celtic druid or something, right?
Okay.
So I go down that rabbit hole, and the god of that was Isis, and the land that he ruled was an Aria land, which is Ireland.
Oh, okay.
Aria and
Yeah.
Isis. So for some reason, 2 weeks prior, I use words that get connected by someone else, and I'm not self-fulfilling them in a weird way.
Right. Yeah.
So they're connecting in a very external way. Just like I didn't make the doctor tell me that what he told me that I was broke, like what that I broke him and all that, you
Right.
know.
Right. Yeah.
So so that was I found that interesting about the twin flame thing, where it's like if it is true, once again, if all things are true, which obviously these are a lot of assumptions,
Hmm.
um, that twin flame could have left a week after I had come here and left
Right.
my previous life, and it kind of weirdly, oddly feels time wise to fit. But whatever.
Yeah. Now, I'm sorry, I'm gonna get fixated on past lives things here
Yeah.
because because I certainly, if you think about um, nature as a whole, right?
Yes.
Uh, and we observe nature. Nature recycles itself constantly.
Yeah.
Okay, so just the leaves have fallen, the leaves will rot and die, go into the ground, the leaves then become nutrients for the tree that grows more leaves, right?
Yeah. It's
So
all cyclical, right?
yeah, it all makes perfect sense that we would be part of that pattern. So the only difference, we die, we go into the ground, we become nutrients, we become other things, right? The
Right.
only difference would be the soul, right? So if you believe that there's a soul, then what happens to that soul? And then that's where you get into this past lives thing. That's where you get into all these other things too. So we'll
Right.
make the assumption that there is a soul, and religion wants you to think your soul goes to heaven or so forth, but you know, I don't think we have any scientific things that say leaves go to heaven after they fall off a
Mhm.
tree. And
Right.
so it makes more sense if you follow nature to imagine that souls get recycled as well.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe it takes a while, but it
Right.
happens, right? And
Right.
so then, but then my thing about that is it seems like people who talk about this always talk about the famous things, right? When I was past life, I was this, I was that, I was something great. Now I'm a piece of shit. But whenever I was past, I had
Yeah.
past
Back
life,
then, I was awesome.
I was awesome. You know what I mean? I always wonder why that is. Is that like, I think that's where the ego comes into play, because you don't want to go, want to talk about how you think this life is good. My last one was really terrible. You know what I mean? I was a
Right.
piss boy or whatever,
Right.
back in the day, carrying around these jars of piss. Um,
Yep.
but I mean, I wonder why that is. I wonder if because there's so much at play, right? So because we can have thoughts and so forth, there's so much at play that it's really, really hard, I think, for most people to be completely honest with themselves, let alone with everybody else. And so we manipulate all these things to our advantage, just like we would in our reality.
Right.
What's your thoughts on that? Now
Man,
you're
that's a
telling me
lot.
that you're telling me that your story there and so forth, you're experiencing it. You're not trying to influence in it that, as far as you know.
Yeah,
But
so okay, so I have a very large anti-authoritarian nature to my biological self.
to your current Syrian form. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah. The corporeal being that is a total anti-establishment kind of guy. Not
Right.
in an anti-establishment. I don't fight authority. I ask what makes you think that is the authority to take, and then if you
Hmm.
can legitimately explain it to me, I'm on board. Like thou shalt not murder or no murder. Okay, that makes sense because like that
Yeah.
takes someone else's
I don't want
ability to
anybody to
be
murder
free. Like
me, so
duh. Yeah,
yeah.
right. I do have 3 letters. I do have 3 letter name though, or 3 word or 3 word 3 name word name 3 word name with
Right.
the
Yeah, right.
Constitution. So, but yeah, I don't like to bastardize it. I'm actually an anti-theist. Like I don't like replacing one authority for another. To be honest,
Hmm.
it's weird that I have all these courtesy and I'm extremely courteous. I have a healthy, loving relationship with a woman, and we are great together. And I treat her with the utmost respect, and I treat people how they want to be treated. They have to earn my respect, but they get my courtesy for sure.
Hmm.
And that that may have come from because my parents were religious, but they instilled the values in me. So
Right.
the values are the important thing, not where, to be honest, where they came from.
Right.
And when people get focused on where it came from, it it kind of changes because like, well, I don't believe that that's where it came from, so maybe I don't believe in the values then. Well,
Right.
don't
Yeah.
conflate them, right? The values are very separate. Like when people say this is built on God, it's like, no, it's Christian values that did it. The
Mhm.
values of Christianity. Because I'm not, because you can't sell me on God. Like it didn't come from God. It came. People wrote this stuff down, and they're the ones who have picked up the muskets. I
Right.
mean, they're the ones who dumped the tea and fought, and they were the ones who were going to suffer the consequences if they didn't win.
If it didn't work out,
And
yeah.
and it was treason. It was hanging. There was no, and they were affluent. They were all business people. They could have just left their lives and slowly, what's that? I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees, kind of thing.
Right. Exactly, yeah.
That's a spirit that we lost a little bit. It's hard to recapture. But to your point, yeah, conflating. See, I'm trying to figure out where it comes from. I'm thinking that this is an emergent property, not a thing that's always been there.
Mhm.
So I think over time, this God thing, that this consciousness that's evolved, is as these collections of cells have become uh, more and more complex. There's a what's that weight scale when it hits a tipping point. You know
Mhm.
that breaking point, like going through the speed barrier. It's
Right,
like
right.
you push through it, you hit the tipping points, like what's that? I can't think. Critical mass. There it is.
Okay, gotcha.
It like
Terminal
hit critical
velocity.
mass. Right. Terminal velocity, critical mass, and then consciousness. And now it's boom. Now
Mhm.
it is a pattern, and it's very patternist. If you see, like, you ever see like the world create or the universe creation, it's all like spider webby. It's
Mhm.
very pattern like.
Mhm.
So I think the world as this universe dimension is built the way it is for us to be the way we are. And I think there are
Mhm.
multiple dimensions. Do we want to get into that?
Oh, sure, I love multiple dimensions.
Yeah.
The,
Well, what's your next topic? What do you want to talk about? Because I sound like
oh,
a crazy
we
person,
we've
Bob.
gone so far off of the ranch I don't ever write anything down for these things, I just kinda go with the flow.
Me
But I
either,
always
man.
try to have
I
a
just love
starting
talking.
point,
I just
and
love getting to
we
know
didn't even
people.
get anywhere near the starting point, but, no, this is perfectly fine. So, yeah,
If
so,
I may, I actually have my past life regression queued up. I don't know how to share it on here. Can I share it somehow?
I think you can, yeah, if you there's
If
a
I hit play,
there's a
is
present
there a
button
present?
down
Let
there.
me see. Let me see.
I mean, if you wanna
Present.
play it
Yes,
off
there
your
is. Oh,
thing,
yes, there is. All right, present. All right, share screen.
you
Let me
should be
try
able
that.
to do that, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen.
If it doesn't
Is that
work,
how it works? Okay, let's
let's.
do this. Okay.
I
Are you
don't think I
ready?
need to do anything for you.
Okay.
You can do. Okay,
I'm
there
just
you go.
gonna
Okay,
hit
I'm
play.
gonna bring it
Can
up
you see
here.
it?
So
All right. I'm gonna hit play, and it's only like 2 minutes,
there you
but
go.
you'll
Can you see it?
understand how creepy it gets. What's that?
You should be able to see it on the screen now too, possibly.
Yeah. All right. Everybody ready? Here we
I'm
go.
ready. Go.
With each step deeper and deeper back in time, you are almost there. 5, 4, getting closer to the door at the end of the stairway. You can already see the door, feeling relaxed, stepping further down and back in time, deeper and deeper. 3, taking another step further back in time, feeling comfortable and confident. 2, you are in front of the door, an old, beautifully decorated door, way back in time, inviting you to enter and open the door. 1, open the door and step into your past life, into a past scene. You are there. Take a moment and look around. Focus carefully on what you see before you. Take a few moments now and let
Then it
everything
does
go.
that for 2 hours. Did you get that?
Yeah, it was kind of scratching a little bit there.
Yeah. So it does that for 2 hours.
Oh, really? It just falls
Yeah.
off then.
Yeah, I could share rest, but if you listen, it starts gets wobbly and wobbly, and I'll share the whole file. Literally, when she says you're there, it goes to that. And she
Interesting.
pulled it. Yeah, she pulled it off the computer and she hands it to him. She goes, "I'm sorry, the recording got screwed up or something." I'm like, "So I can't." Took it home. I didn't really think anything. The first time I heard it, the hairs on my arm stood up. Though, to be honest.
That's weird. Yeah, I was wondering because you could see on the waveform it had much further to go.
Right. Yeah, and it's literally like it's 2 hours. Like it's two clips of that, and I didn't know, of course, because it was being recorded. And
Right.
what's
Yeah.
interesting, once again, is one of those things where it was one of those handheld recorders, like an 8 hour thing.
Right. Right.
She
Yeah.
put brand new batteries in, and it was dead after 2 or 3. You know what I mean? Like it was dead.
Huh.
Once, one of those weird,
A
who
weird
knows, EMP
situation.
energy
Yeah.
things. Who knows, right?
Right.
But
Yeah. That's always one of those situations where, I mean, that happens in a lot of paranormal kind of situations where people are like, "Oh, it's brand new batteries and now it's dead," and so forth. And but there's not really been um, an adequate scientific explanation. Now, if you were like in the Antarctica and she was doing this, then yes, that makes sense because batteries don't hold their energy in cold weather. It
great point.
zaps the battery, right? But
It's the first
if
thing I
it's
thought
just
about because you talk about temperature changes. Like a lot of people
right,
say the room gets colder, but I can't
yeah,
imagine it, to your point, getting to the temperature that it would get to
right.
do
It
that
had
kind
to
of
be
damage to a
really
battery.
cold, right? It had to get really cold in one very specific spot in order for it to be um, uh, affect the battery like that. So yeah, so you got to wonder. I mean, and you have to wonder why and how. Those are the two things. And some people, they, I think a lot of people attribute whatever's happening at the time to it, right?
Right.
Um, and and I don't know, I don't think that necessarily is the case because and I try, even though I've had weird experiences myself and I know other people have as well. I always try to go to the scientific, but the scientific says it has to be repeatable. So it can't just be a ghost. It can't just be because you're going into regression. It can't just be. So the thing would be is if you did it again and it happened again, right?
Right.
Then you can start. And I don't know what you do for work or anything, but if you work with electronics or anything like that, going through troubleshooting,
Mhm.
troubleshooting is a process of
Right.
elimination.
Right.
And I think so many people in with these kind of mysterious happenstances don't take the time to really troubleshoot. Their
Yeah.
troubleshooting is, let's go to the thing that I want it to be, and then we'll say it's that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
Because I
I'm
don't
gonna
want to
be
go through the
completely honest.
process.
This isn't something. I mean, I'm happy to share it because I think people have had experiences. So I think people are confused, and I'm just as confused as anyone else.
Yeah, no, but the
I'm
problem
happy to
is,
share what I saw.
even
But doesn't mean it happened.
sometimes when you troubleshoot, you never find out what's wrong. I mean, that's
You
just
won't.
part of the
Yeah.
process. And
Yep. It is
so
part of it.
I think we just, the mysteries of things are such that you can't, we aren't equipped yet
Right.
to
Right. But I think
have
the beautiful thirst of the curiosity, right? The
right.
thirst
Yeah,
to
exactly. We want to. So did the person give you any kind of statistical statement once that happened? Oh, this only happened one other time. This happened. This has
uh,
never
yeah,
happened.
she's like, this happened once before,
Yeah.
and I just can't salvage the audio. So I'm like, all right.
And was it did she mention who it was, or I don't, maybe they
Oh,
don't, I don't know.
what do you mean? Like, no, no,
The-
no.
the-
She didn't say like somebody came in. We just didn't
uh-huh.
understand what the static was. We didn't
Oh,
say,
okay.
yeah, we didn't attribute to anything. I'm not attributing it to anything. This is the recording.
Right.
Like
This is what you
you
got.
attribute whatever you want to it, but I can't explain that. Like right when
Was
she
it a
says you
digital
are there,
recorder or
it
was
was
it a
a
analog
tape.
recorder?
It was good. It was a
It said
I think it was
2016,
digital
so I'm
tape. It was
yeah.
digital tape, I think. Like
But it was
not
a
digital
physical
tape, but
tape.
like digital. It was a digital handheld, like a
Okay,
Sony
digital
digital.
handheld recorder. Okay,
Correct. Yeah,
interesting.
and it wobbles. I mean, it's very interesting. It just sounds interesting, but
Yeah,
once
it
again,
does.
I,
The
I'll just share.
because then I
And like I
mean then
said,
you
you
could
are
get
there, and
into
then it
the
gets staticky, and then it goes wonky. It's like seems like something came in right there, like when she said it. I didn't, whatever.
well
But
the question is, did something come in or did something come out? That's the
right, yeah, that's true too.
it
Eesh.
you
Thanks a
don't
lot,
always
Bob.
no, I mean honestly, so because what happens is if so okay, so think about it this way, right? So let's say here's some I know that I could not necessarily replicate what happened, but I can replicate something similar by just taking a magnet, right? You take a
Oh,
magnet
great.
and you move it closer to the microphone. It's going to mess with the microphone and you're going to get a result, right?
Right.
And what that is then is you're moving that electromagnetic
Field.
field closer to the source.
Yes.
So
It's
that's
a
what I'm
great
saying.
point.
So as you get more and more comfortable getting ready to go into this process, right? Does
Yeah.
that mean that your magnetic field gets wider than it would normally? Because you
Right. That
have
could
to
make
know, you have to think of, if again, not to keep drawing it back, but if you think about nature, right? So and just think about
well, I,
emotions.
Bob, if I
People
may,
bottle
I'm
up.
an evolutionary guy. I'm all about
Yeah.
nature. I'm a Darwinist guy. This is what makes this stuff so weird. I think it's kind of an evolutionary thing at some point.
Yeah.
But please continue. Yeah, absolutely.
So people bottle up, right? So it's even a term, right? It's happened so repeatedly amongst everybody. You bottle up your emotions, you bottle up your anger, you bottle up all these things, right? So let's say, for the sake of argument, that you have a field that, because we're all are electrical, everybody is. Your
Absolutely.
field
We
is,
are big batteries, man. We
yeah.
generate energy and electromagnetic pulses and stuff. Yeah.
So then yours is bottled up, and when you relax, then it releases, so then it can be broader than yourself, right? So maybe
Yeah, maybe
during the
like
day.
your human body's a Faraday shield or a Faraday
Yeah,
cage, and then you release it by
right,
lowering the resistance to it in a
right,
way.
yeah.
Yeah. Look, these are awesome concepts, and they're great. I love that you just had this openness to talk about it. So thank you, because who know we're not going to have an answer at the end of this conversation,
No, we're not.
but just so we're gonna
But
have different ideas is beautiful. I
would
love
be
that.
interesting though is for you to try it, to do it as an experiment. So then you go to different people because you want the variable to be you, not the other people.
Right.
Okay, because maybe again you talk about the I just heard about this twin flame thing and everything, not necessarily saying that this is it, but maybe because you're there and they're there, then they react differently. Everything becomes a variable, right? If
Right.
you could do
Absolutely.
something just by
Well, there's
yourself, that would
causality,
be,
right? It's just
yeah.
causality in general.
If you could
Yeah.
do it by yourself, that would be the best, because then you could sit there, you have your recorder, you start recording, you go through the meditation, and you see if this happens. And then if you can get it to repeat, then now you can say, and then now you just need to set up things to see, okay, is it this? Is it that? Whenever people, one of my pet peeves, because I love talking about all this stuff and I love thinking about it and so forth, but is using the word energy. So, yes, there's energy. We're full of energy. There's energy everywhere and so forth. But is it measurable?
Right.
And rather than just being generic about it, be specific, and then start thinking about how do we measure that energy.
Right. We got to
Because
talk
then,
frequency then if we're going to talk
yeah,
energy. And then we're going to have to
exactly.
talk about state. We're going to have to talk about dimension. I mean, there's so many different variables to what energy is, to your point.
But I think, at one of the problems with people talking about these things, and the reason it gets such a negative reaction, is um because um they're not trying to measure it. They're
Right.
in a way, it's almost like, the parents who use a happenstance to their advantage to get the kids. Santa Claus wants you to
Yep.
be good, and
Right.
parents use that so that
Right.
that kids behave, right.
Right.
We
Yeah.
I'm not
Well,
going to go into the
I
whole
mean,
background of
let's go
that,
back to
but
the Ten Commandments, right? Like well, one of my previous episodes was just breaking down the Ten Commandments. Like,
right.
you have a guy telling you that he's got the one single source to the highest of all. You're gonna
Mhm.
listen to him because he told you that he's got the source to the highest of all. Of
That's
course,
right.
you're gonna listen to him.
I got a
He's
guy.
gonna
He's
use
got a
that,
deal. He can get me
right?
in.
Like, you know what I'm saying? So it to that point, the hierarchy does become an absolute issue. And what I found, if I may, is I am wholly unique in the way that if you hear me talk about it, you don't hear me all in like the people who have the experiences generally. They're normally like, oh, yeah, so, this thing happened. I'm like, no, this is what I saw. This is what I experienced. I don't know what it is.
Mhm.
But the people that I generally meet in that world are all in and they
Right.
just buy it.
Right.
And it's
Well,
it's
I
not measurable, to your point, and I
Mhm.
question it, and it's like I'm in this weird limbo where I've experienced some weird things, and I also don't believe them,
Right.
you know?
Well, I think
So
that part of that gets to where you're talking about all these variables, is gets to where the ego is. And so people, you know, people want to feel good. Okay. So, you and I have done things in our lives to make ourselves feel good. Everybody does. And some people can, measure that, keep it measured, and some people can't. And because everybody wants to, I would, you talk about drugs or whatever drug you want to do is going to make you feel good. The problem is, are you going to feel so good that you forget about everything else in the world?
right.
And so
There's still
that's the
purpose and
problem is,
meaning that needs to
yeah,
happen, right?
the problem is not the drug. The problem is the effect the drug has on you, to the point where you're like, all I want is the drug, right?
Right,
As opposed to, I can enjoy this drug today, and then tomorrow I can, be a responsible person, and take care of other people in my life and so forth.
right.
So drugs aren't bad. It's just they love to say that, but drugs are not bad. Drugs are fantastic. The problem is
They are
sometimes they're
beautiful.
so fantastic that they ruin your life. Yeah.
Yeah, they might be so
Yeah.
fantastic. They could really mean that. That's
So
just no, that's just menthol, Bob. That's just menthol. I swear.
but that's okay. But I'm saying that that's the thing. And so what happens, I think, is sometimes people get invested in these things so much. Again,
It becomes who they
it's the
are.
same thing. Yeah, it feels so good that the ego kicks in, the addictive nature of being a human kicks in, and you're like, this is all I need because it makes me feel good.
Right.
And then the reality is, though, every once in a while you have to sit back and say, you know, maybe feeling good all the time isn't the best thing for me when I'm, you know what I mean? And not to pick on
There needs to
anybody,
be
but
struggle. It's
yeah,
like you can't. It's like does a shark? A shark has to move forward through the water.
right.
The water is a resistance force. It still
Hmm.
has to swim through it, or
Right.
else it dies.
Yeah.
So if life is like the water, we just have to be swimming. If we just sit stationary, I think we all kind of just
Right. But
collapse.
then people use these things, I think, sometimes as a like a drug. You know,
Yeah,
they say, oh,
or a
religion.
crutch.
Yeah, religion's the same way. You know,
Yep,
I feel terrible about myself, so I'm going to believe in God because God makes me feel better. So then I'm a better person. So I feel, you know, everything's better. Whereas,
right.
you know, if I don't have God in my life, I'm just a horrible wretch of a person. And I mean, it's not necessarily true. I mean, that's
No, not at all.
becomes your mind's playing with yourself at that point. But I mean, I mean, you see it. Everybody sees it all around them. I mean, we wouldn't have stories if we weren't rife with all these conflicted feelings and so forth. But I find it really interesting. So you're drawn to this because of your experiences. Now, once you
Yeah,
go
I was
to these
knocked
things,
conscious, Bob. Like I
yeah,
said, like literally, that's why I came up with it and that's how it really came full circle. So go ahead,
yeah.
but that's what it was. It was knocked conscious, and I've become more aware of things lately. I guess.
But then you also, but I mean, you're like you said, you went to the group and so forth and got um, went through a process and with the person touching you and talking to you about it and so forth.
Yeah,
But do you do this like um, regularly, or is it something that's just like, I mean, is it once a year? Is it once
yeah,
a week, or what's your where are you at in that world now?
yeah. I'd say I go through some waves. I've stepped away from the meeting with people. Most of the people that I've met have either gone literally crazy or taken their own lives. To be
Hmm.
completely honest, it's a pretty tough life. The man, if I may expound on the person that I met the one night. Um, if just before, if I may, if you're struggling with anything, ask for help.
Oh yeah, no,
Is all I can tell.
definitely.
Like
You
I
don't
don't know
need to
how to
suffer
explain it.
alone. That's what I always
Yeah.
tell
So
people.
yeah. So this is how this night happens. I I look at this whole list of events, and there's this meetup at this woman's house for some. She's a channeler and she's doing some meditation circle. Cool. Never done it before. I'm like, something tells me go. Like it's not like this is Julia telling you to go. You gotta go. It's like it's just like go or like a ding. Like a pressure. You get intuitions. Everybody has them. You fight them or you
Right,
go with them, right?
right, yeah.
So I end up going to this place, and I'm sitting there, and my back is to the entrance. I'm sitting on a sofa, and all of a sudden, this weird rush kind of comes over me. I'm like, "What the heck?" I turn around, and this woman walks in. She's a middle-aged woman, young middle-aged, and this younger man walk in together.
Hmm.
And I'm like, "Okay." Like just something was off. You know what I mean? Just felt it. Like you're talking
Hmm.
about the energy thing. Like if
Right.
that person gave off that, that's what I picked up. Like them giving it off, right?
Hmm.
So we all started sitting around the sofa and we started sitting down and like a sofa is like L shaped, like at a sectional.
Right,
So he
yeah.
was sitting on one corner, I was on the other. So we were kind of catty corner from each other. I'm at the end because I like to go last. I let everyone share first because if we run out of time, we run out of time. Big deal.
Mhm.
Um, the woman goes and she goes, "This is my son. He's gotten in a lot of trouble, gone to jail, gets in fights. This is my last ditch effort is to take him to a place like this to try to help him."
Okay.
I'm like, okay. So then he starts talking, and he just loses it, like crying. And
Mhm.
like I said, it compelled me. I just compelled to put my hand on his knee, and like second to happen, he like looked at me and just locked on me.
Mhm.
So he shares his life. He had a motorcycle accident. He was a motocross rider. Had a
Mhm.
motorcycle accident. Was in a coma. Hit his head. Same, very similar.
Oh, yeah.
It's really odd. It's really weird stuff. So, uh, I think we exchanged emails, or we had the list of emails. He'd write on a list or whatever. I think he took
Right,
mine
right.
down off the list and emailed me the next morning.
He broke protocol, took your name off the
Did that
list.
son of a gun? And I share the email with you. It's so personal. I'm happy to share it, but I don't want to share his name, so I don't want to put all that in there.
Sure,
But
no, that's
basically, he's
fine.
like, you were the one person who connected with me, who understood me, and I never met this person. Like I didn't understand,
Right.
but it just all worked. He like, I'd love to meet you up so we could talk. So we're in Phoenix, Arizona. We meet up. It's so darn hot out there, and we're out there so long. We're in a shaded tree. We're under a tree, and I got sunburned. That's how long we were out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we were out there for hours, and he was just sharing his whole life and everything. And he was a troubled person, right?
Mhm.
So he and I would meet a lot, and he told me all these stories, and he told me things like weird things he got figured out, right? Well, he took his own life, um, and we actually had a meeting, like a meeting at a place where we always did meditations with him, and it was like a week after he had passed.
Mhm.
And our psychic medium friend was there, and she's like, these people don't come through for a while usually. This is weird. I don't think this is going to happen, to be honest,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Well, allegedly, he may have come through, to be completely honest.
Mhm.
And I'm going to share my personal one because once again, I can't tell you what other people tell you. I can tell you what I did, right?
Right,
And you
right.
can tell me from my mannerisms that I experienced this, whether it's connected or not. It's one. So she was getting messages from this gentleman allegedly and pulling people individually aside if they wanted to hear the message.
Mhm.
So she goes, "Oh, he has a message for you." And I'm like, "Right." Like literally, like, don't get me wrong.
Right.
Come on, man. I'm like, she's like, "Would you like to hear in private, or do you want me to?" I'm like, "Share in front of everybody. What do I care?" Right.
Right. Yeah, right.
And she does two things, and I'm not, this is where it gets weird, man. And it's like crazy. No one else would know this, by the way. She goes, he's throwing a Rubik's cube at you. He's throwing
Uh-huh.
a Rubik's cube at you. And like immediately my emotion just bubbled to the top. One of the last conversations I had with him, he had a notebook where he drew a lot of pictures. He was schizophrenic. He had issues, right? Like
Mhm.
I think the trauma didn't help.
Right.
But he used to say to me, "I figured it out, man. The world's a Rubik's cube.
Uh-huh.
I figured it out. The world's a Rubik's cube." He didn't share this with any, like, you know what I mean? Like, that's like a
Yeah.
notebook he would kill somebody over, like if someone
Right.
grabbed it, you know what I mean? And he said that to me. That was his phrase to me. The world's a Rubik's cube.
Interesting.
And then then she said something like SNL, something about SNL with, the SNL characters, blah, blah, blah. And once again, it hit me because he would try to shake my hand like look me square in the eye, very respectful, shake my hand hard. And I go, brothers don't shake hands, brothers got a hug. And it was a Chris Farley thing.
Right,
And no one
right.
else do that. No one else. It was only when he and I were together.
Right.
So for those two things to come out, I'm gonna say those are correlated to an experience that I had that was connected to him. I, I don't know anybody else who could have. You can't guess that.
Right,
You,
right. They wouldn't
they're
just
so
go,
random.
"Oh, he said, get some fresh air," or,
Right.
whatever. "Take a
Right.
jog."
Because my other friend was this. She said he's like this. He's doing this. He's like a
Uh-huh.
suit, like tearing out like Superman. She said,
Uh-huh.
and my other friend said the same thing. She got emotional. She's like, he used to say the body's just a scuba suit. It's just a suit. You just have to take it off. You just
Yeah.
have to take it off. So it's weird
It
because
is weird.
like I said, like the liquid gold like how I had to the picture I had to get to where liquid gold was, for example,
Right.
is really unique. But I'm German, so I had to go with golden beer and a golden rim on the glass and actual gold poured into glass that's golden. Like that's how I saw it.
Yeah.
I didn't see the can of Scotch liquid gold. I saw
Right.
correlative. You know what I mean? I saw it in my way.
Right. It was all
Like
interpretive.
right. So first date with an ex of mine, I remember very vividly. We were talking like if we were to have kids. She goes, "Yeah, I'd have a daughter, but you'd never guess her name." And Amelia Earhart popped in my head.
Mhm.
So I go, "Is it Amelia?" And she goes, "What the fuck?" Like she's like, "What the?" It turns out she was Amelia Bedelia.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
But you see, like for me to get it, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known Amelia Bedelia, but I'm a pilot, so I would have known
Right.
Amelia Earhart. So like
Yeah.
it correlated to me in that weird way, right? Like
Filtered
so,
through.
right. So it's like hard to say. Maybe there it is all this simulation, and they're playing around with it, right? Who knows? And maybe the controller, the controller, they're hitting the controller. I've avoided an accident actually. Car
Mhm.
was coming up or passing me on the left in just a HOV lane and I'm like, something's not right. And I literally let off the gas and moved over a lane. And I'm like, I saw a picture of it. It was a pickup truck. I saw him come in front of us. And I'm like, I even said it to my girlfriend audibly as I slowed, like just let off the gas. I said, something's not right. Just around the bend, a car crash had happened. He actually swerved, came across, and hit somebody in front of us. And we actually
Mm.
avoided the accident. So
Oh my gosh.
it and it's like when I'm in the most like relaxed states, to your point, it's like
Mhm.
when I'm not really conscious, you know what I mean? When I'm
Right. You're
in a
just going
groove or
through
in
it.
a zone, right? That's why it works like meditation wise and such. But once
Right.
again, these are I'm happy to call myself crazy because I'm not acting crazily on these ideas, right? I would
Well,
like to
yeah,
understand them,
you know,
you know.
crazy is doing the negative things over and over again.
Oh yeah, expecting different results, right?
Right, expecting something
The
else to change.
Einsteinian kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Um
you mentioned God a little bit. Are you a little bit? It sounds a little bit like that is not the path that you've taken. Is the religious path, or are you more of a religious person?
I always hedge my bets on everything, so I'm a hedger.
Pascal, do it.
Uh I grew up in a religious family and so forth, not fanatically so or anything, but it obviously played a role. And I think I think of it kind of like what you said. It's the religion is a good way to guide people into being better people.
Yeah,
You don't have to take it, so far where you're like, I'm going to give my life to this or, praise this or that or the other. But it certainly does help you. It gives you a lens to look through for things
certainly
through.
good framework.
Yeah, and then that way you can kind of judge accordingly through that lens as opposed to that. But I think that unfortunately one of my and this may just be upbringing or something else. I don't know, but uh, my sense is whenever money enters into something, then it's not good. And so
Yeah,
church unfortunately involves a lot of money
it
in
does.
organized religion. And I realize that you have to have money to survive in our current world, right? Because it's all
Yep,
driven by these kind of things. But you don't have to have a lot of money. And
yeah,
so you have to keep your eye on to me, you always have to keep your eye on the money in the sense that if the church is overstepping its boundaries in that department, then that tells me, well, wait a minute, this is not the best place because now you're moving away from morals and moving into kind of profiteering a little bit or well, we know how to spend this money better than those people know. Well, no, not really, you know what I mean? And so
right.
and then that's what always gets me
Like
with
those gold domes. Those gold domes didn't
right.
come
Exactly.
from. They didn't
Exactly.
come from the priests. Okay,
Uh-huh.
they
They
didn't
came
come
from
from.
the parishioners. So yeah, I mean that's kind of the area to watch is to see that and just power in general, how people wield their authority.
Yeah.
And so,
You know, it's
you
funny.
know, I mean,
I've replaced like the money thing, because you're right. The money does corrupt, but where I think we actually become corrupt is when we're not transparent.
sure,
So like
but you can still be
burying the
transparent
stories,
to have
right?
money, and then, it's still not
Right.
good.
Right. No, but I'm saying, like, if we knew all the dollars that came in and every penny and where it went, for example, we'd be
Mhm.
like, wow, they're making a lot of money. We shouldn't tithe this much, should we? You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
we would
exactly,
self-correct in a weird way, right?
exactly.
So like,
Yeah.
it's always been my case that, like, if we were always transparent politically, if we were transparent with our authoritative systems,
Mhm.
we could micro correct all the time, and it would not be that swept pile under the rug
Right, yeah.
that, like, the Catholics come, like, it you look, you have the one thing, and then you're like, it's resolved. Everybody goes back to work. And then Chicago just released a new one 6 months ago. It's like, oh, we hid this, by the way. It's like, oh, now
Right.
I'm complete. You completely lost it then. You had your opportunity to get it all out, be
Right,
done with
no,
it,
it's
and
never gonna come all
say
out.
it's over. And you said it was, and you didn't. You actually had many more things that you were hiding. And
Right.
that's the problem. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because if it's transparent, we know it's like, okay, you're stepping out of line. It's like, oh crap, I better get back in line quickly. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? It's not such a big
Sure.
correction to get back in line. But
The
to your
the
point,
interesting
the
thing,
money
though,
does corrupt.
is sometimes it's transparent and people just don't care.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true too.
And and I think that, unfortunately, is just as bad, and so that's why I mean, I agree with you, transparency is always good, but sometimes you people get in a situations, where even when they're transparent, because again, it's a lot of moving parts, just like we're
Yeah,
talking about with all these other things. There's so many moving parts that, there could be a power thing, and it's like, yeah, well, we're going to take this money and we're going to do this with it, and everybody, are you okay with that? Well, yeah, my livelihood's tied to you, so therefore I'm okay with anything, because I'm glad you're only taking 10% rather than 25%.
right.
And so I, I always think that,
It's complicated.
yeah, I always think that, but if you watch the money, then you can kind of see at least where things are going,
Well,
and
that's
you
where you
can
see the
go over.
corruption is,
Yeah,
right? Like, the
yeah.
point is, you end up following the money trail to find the corruption.
Hmm.
However, if that was transparent, is like everything was out on the books, is like, we are BP, we just gave these people all these raises, even though we cost you guys all this money.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, we
Sure.
actually shared that information. It would be like,
Right.
we'd have a different voice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, you're right. The money is where it is. And look, we could talk, money has
Yeah.
been the trace of all of
That gets,
this.
and that's organized religion. I always think that's the problem with it for me, is the money aspect of things, and then this kind of total dependence that they preach. Total dependence, they realize everybody's not going to be there, right? There's always a spectrum, there's always a variance, but they still preach it because they want to have people on that end of the scale, you know what I mean? Because
Right.
they're going to be the ones that will, do whatever needs to be done at the time it needs to be done for them. And I'm like, can't we be in the middle and just preach to the middle a little bit more, because that's really where
Right.
most people are. But
Right.
no, they never want to do that necessarily.
Right. Yeah, they speak a lot more about tolerance than they actually deliver it, right? In a
Exactly,
way.
exactly.
Like,
There's
my
so many
father's highly
things. Yeah.
religious in his own, he has his own faith, and my father is a remarkable individual.
Mhm.
I've got stories about him and my parents. I mean, my parents met here, but my mom escaped East Germany in 1953 before the wall went up with my grandfather
Stasi.
and the
Yeah.
family. Right? We talked about it on the other show. And my dad
Mhm.
left Hamburg, walked with his family and came to America alone, and they met here. It's crazy. I'm so blessed
That
to be
is
here.
cool. Yeah.
and and the thing is, like, he's super religious, and I want to say he has a personal faith that is extremely strong. You would think he's a good man, right? And then in 2016 he voted for a guy who said grab him by the, so ideologically speaking, like, some things you just can't get over, because to him the thought of going the other way
Right.
was so atrocious
Yeah.
that, He was
Unfortunately for
willing
me,
to give up
politics, they're
one.
all terrible, so that's
What's
fine.
that called? He's willing to give up one. Yeah, but he's willing to give up one. What is it called? One
The
ethic for another.
lesser of two
Yeah.
evils, or the yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, how can
Mhm.
you justify that? That's like the most not good godlike thing to say.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're gonna actually. It's not even abstaining. He actually casts the vote for the person.
right.
So it's like, there's even a little more of a step there.
Yeah,
So we all are, to your point, we kind of all have limits to which we give in or which we would bend the knee, I guess, in a way.
right, yeah, no, definitely, and,
Yeah, we're
uh,
human.
yeah, and unfortunately, we're extremely flawed, and, those flaws come out in different ways every day, it seems like. But, let me, we need to wrap up here just a little bit because I have, things that I have to go do, but,
Yeah, thank you for the
uh,
conversation, by the way. I'm
no,
sorry
but,
we got in some weird vortices, but we're going to talk again. So
no, no. Tell people a little bit about. I mean, if you want, where they can find other of your shows, which I've got it on the screen here. But why don't you
yeah,
talk
so
about it a little bit?
yeah, absolutely. So basically, it's Knocked Conscious. I also had a show called Beer Googles, double E, double O, double G, and that was basically where we got drunk with my buddy and we used to look up random stuff on the internet. So it's like beer goggles, but Google. We had fun with it. I don't have that anymore because he stepped away and he moved, but he's a great guy, still good friends. But anyway, started doing my own thing. I've gotten a little bit anti-war, so I've gotten a little bit more libertarian and just more middle of the road minded, shall we
Hmm.
say, trying to be apolitical, being extremely apolitical in a weird way,
Right.
like politically apolitical, if that makes sense. So I just had a conversation on Monday with the libertarian presidential candidate, for example.
Oh, right.
So
Yeah, you mentioned that when we talked before. Yeah.
yeah, really exciting. So you can catch me on knockedconscious.com. I'm on Twitter at Mark Sean Puls. It's my full name. I probably should change it back to Mark Puls or something because it is kind of weird.
No, I just
But
thought I'd say so later.
it's okay, Bob. I love the questions and you're calling me out on my stuff, man. But YouTube is also Knocked Conscious, and my name's Mark, and I like having conversations with a lot of people about a plethora of different topics. I will talk about anything, and if you look at my headline, I had presidential nominee. I just had the lead singer of Wheatus. I had Michael Jackson's nephew. I had the guy who took the first picture of the Hubble telescope. Like, it's like stuff like that. It's just weird, interesting people that I find fascinating, and I just go into rabbit holes. And when you come on, we're definitely going into dimensions, sir.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm all up for it. So,
And
well,
and
thank
thank you
you.
so much. I'm rarely on this side of the microphone. I feel so awkward and I probably feel extra rambly, but I don't,
Oh no,
this isn't the side
you
I'm
did
usually on.
great.
I usually like asking the questions.
Did fantastic. Well, Mark, uh, thank you for being on here, and yes, I'm anxiously awaiting to talk about dimensions on Not Conscious, and maybe some other things. Who knows? We'll see where it takes us. But for this one, we'll call it a wrap, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you so much, guys. Take care.